Call the meeting to order, the Wicomico County Council Legislative Session 2024-05 for March 5th, 2024, right? All those that like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
and give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion from council to approve the consent agenda.
To move.
Second. Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved unanimously and passes. Who do we have on Zoom? Jeff, right? Jeff, you there?
He's on mute right now. I can
Okay.
unmute him if you like.
Okay, that's fine. At this time, we have a proclamation we want to read to recognize March 10th through the 16th as AmeriCorps weeks, as AmeriCorps week. Sorry, I'm trying to get all my stuff together. Who would like to read it? James, would you like to read it since Jeff's not here?
Josh actually has it.
Josh, okay, that's good.
He's on it.
And we have Miss Sarah Heim. There you go. You can go to the podium and they'll read it right there and for you.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. This is a proclamation for AmeriCorps Week. Whereas AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors programs provide opportunities for more than 200,000 Americans to serve their country through services at nonprofits, schools, public agencies, and community and faith-based groups across the country. Whereas the ShoreCorps program in Wicomico County helps to meet local needs of more than 20 locations in Salisbury and surrounding areas. Whereas AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps Seniors volunteers encourage collaboration and partnership, leveraging millions of volunteers in service and acquiring the support of local partners to increase the effectiveness of their initiatives. Whereas AmeriCorps Week is an opportunity to recognize the dedicated commitment of millions of Americans who have chosen to serve their country through AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors, and to encourage Americans to follow in their steps of service. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Wicomico County Council hereby proclaims March 10th through 16th, 2024 as AmeriCorps Week in Wicomico County, and urge our citizens to thank AmeriCorps members and alumni seniors volunteers for their service. Done this 5th day of March 2023, signed by all the county council. And we have with us Sarah Heim, who helps lead the ShoreCorps program, which I should say that I worked with them, a former organization I worked with, had a AmeriCorps ShoreCorps member, Taylor Carty, who was just the absolutely best, one of the best people I've ever worked with, and that was mostly I'd attribute that to the training and the work that you all did with her. So thank you very much. Anything you'd like to say?
Oh, no, just thank you so much for recognizing AmeriCorps Week and our presence here in the community. Yeah,
Thank you. Can we get a picture?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Next, I think the rest of these are out in the hall. This is a proclamation to recognize the James M. Bennett Unified Strength and Conditioning Team. This is for winning gold medals in first place in the Interscholastic Unified State Invitational.
Come on up.
Just line up against the wall all the way behind the podium there, right behind Shane, and spread out, and then
Somebody come over here if you want. All right. The James and Bennett High Unified Strength and Conditioning Team earned the gold medal and first place honors in its division at the recent Interscholastic Unified State Invitational Competition held on February 20th. James and Bennett earned first place honors in the cycling, bench press, shuttle run, jump rope, flexed arm hang, and deadlift events. First and second place in the PT series event, and third place in the race, walk, and standing long jump events. Many students scored their personal best scores as well. The team also had several student coaches attending who were invaluable in helping push James and Bennett's athletes to do their best. The team has been working all season to improve its scores and was able to peak at just the right time. Wicomico Schools is proud to partner with the Special Olympics of Maryland to offer unified sports seasons in its high schools. Students with and without disabilities join to have fun, master the skills of a sport, and compete in strength and conditioning in the winter, bocce in the spring, and tennis in the fall. Team from all 4 Wicomico County high schools competed in the state invitational tournament. So this is a proclamation, certificate of recognition to the James and Bennett Unified Strength and Conditioning Team for winning gold medals and first place in the Interscholastic Unified State Invitational.
You all can move up as close as you want. You're not bothering anybody.
Congratulations. Congratulations. You guys want to say anything? No? Anybody want to say anything?
I think that's a first. This is a really special one. Has anybody ever tried to pole vault? Because we have a champion in pole vaulting here. I tried it once, couldn't believe it. You might say I just ran right straight through, right? Nothing ever happened, nothing developed from it. But this is a proclamation to recognize Reese Howard, who does know how to do it, of Parkside High School for winning the 2A state championship for pole vault. James Wynn is going to be reading the proclamation. Thank you all. Thanks,
Is
Russ.
there a Reese Howard in the house?
He's coming in, he's trying to get in the door.
Is he going to come through the window, maybe?
Yeah.
That would be a good entrance.
Yeah. How you doing? Yeah. Yeah. What's going on? How you doing? Okay, cool. All right, well, I'm going to read a little cool story that was given to me, I guess by one of you guys. So anyway, Reese Howard, he's a Maryland 2A indoor track and field pole vault state champion. Reese Howard is a junior at Parkside High School. He was the only 2024 indoor track and field state champion for Wicomico County Public Schools. He cleared 14 foot 6 inches, new Parkside indoor track record. His personal. This is obviously probably his personal best record, and it's the second highest vault in the state this year. Cool story. This time last year, apparently, Reese Howard finished second in the state champion to Karim Kemadigo. I think that's it. Also from Parkside. In the pole vote, they both cleared 13 foot, but Karim won for a fewer misses. Karim later successfully defended his pole vault crown by winning the outdoor state champion in pole vault in the spring for 2 state titles in just a few months. And now is the pole vaulting for the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So Reese, who was only in 10th grade last year, kept working, practicing, and persevering so that he could get even better at the pole vault. Now forward in February 21st at the MPSSAA 2A Indoor State Championship in College Park, Reese pole vaults 14 foot 6 inches, wins the state indoor title, and has the second in the state, in his highest vault ever. That is what we call hard work. I appreciate it. Well, congratulations, Reese. You want to say any words? This is your 15 minutes. But anyway, we're just here presenting this proclamation to him. This is what we call hard work, and we want to recognize that. So you want to come up here and we'll get a picture?
To put this into perspective, that's about the height of this ceiling here, 14 foot. Yeah, that part over there, that part over there, yeah. That's a big jump, isn't it? Wow. I don't even want to go climb the ladder that high.
Y'all can come up front if you want.
No, no.
I thought it's really. Shirley, I think we gotta try to get the audio a little straight here first. We good? That's okay. All right.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. We have two public hearings on the agenda this evening. Both of them were published in the local newspaper and posted on the county's website. The first public hearing is on resolution number 23-2024. This is establishing an initial rental rate in the amount of $250 for the use of the pavilion at Pirates Wharf Park by the Department of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism. And we do have Mr. Steve Miller here, the Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley. At this time, we open the floor for public hearing on resolution number 23-2024. If you have anything you'd like to make, any comments you'd like to make, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. That concludes the public hearing for resolution number 23-2024. Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 23-2024. Second. Second. Discussion. James.
I had an individual reach out to me and was concerned that it might be, he's concerned that it might be priced a little high. I just want to, I'm just asking for him because he's not here today, but is this a normal rate for pavilions across the county?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. So this is slightly higher. Our typical pavilions that offer restrooms and full amenities are $190. Those have not been looked at for a number of years. Pirates Wharf adding extra amenities that those pavilions don't have, being brand new. We vetted this through the Recreation and Parks Commission and felt like $250 was a very reasonable number. And what we hope to do is next off-season look at all of them because, again, they haven't been looked at in over a decade. So so it's slightly higher than what our highest rates are currently, but again, it's got newer and better amenities that these other pavilions do not have.
What's you're talking about $60 more. The highest rate, I think, is $190 for your others.
Correct.
What you said newer and better. What's the difference? I mean, in some of the other.
So this has heated restrooms. You've got waterfront views. There's one of the unique features of this pavilion, the size of it's got ceiling fans, which other pavilions don't have. And then there's also this patio that's built, if you've been out there. You've got the normal pavilion, which will have picnic tables and all the rest, but then there's this kind of really neat patio off the back end, which is great for photo ops, for weddings, things of that nature. So again, it's our nicest pavilion that we have in the county, and the commission recommended the $250. I concur with that recommendation.
Are you anticipating the other pavilions to increase for rental next year or in the following years?
It's varied over the years. It's kind of cyclical because a lot of pavilion rentals that we get, some of them are return annual events, fundraiser type things, but a lot of them are family reunions and So I don't know that we have a great way to forecast that, but I certainly anticipate the Pirates Wharf one will be very heavily used. We're getting a lot of calls. We're hoping to start rental April 1 because we don't have an established rate, and we're just still doing some touch-up at the park, but we're hoping to begin this in April.
All right.
Other questions?
I have a quick question. You were saying you want to look at the other pavilions, and I do suggest that you start that because there have been complaints, especially at the Billie Jean Jackson Park. Like the bathrooms, upgrading them or cleaning them out or whatever you do.
Okay.
So I'm glad you're going to look at the others next year.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of resolution, 23-2024, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution passes unanimously. Thank you,
very
Mr. Miller.
Okay, next for your consideration is a public hearing on resolution number 24-2024. This is amending the fiscal year 2024 operating and capital budget to make a supplemental appropriation from prior year fund balance for the funding of capital projects in the amount of $5,317,815. Council did hold a work session on this request on February the 20th, and we have Mrs. Pam Olin here, Director of Finance, if you have any questions.
Can we,
Let me finish the public hearing real quick.
I was going to say, could we say what the capital improvements are? Because I think there's 4 of them, and maybe not everybody knows what this is.
Ms. Hurley, do you have that to read for the public? In case someone here hears it and has concerns.
Would you like me to read those projects?
I think there's only 4, right?
Yeah, there's only 4.
Yes, I can read those. You're looking at marina facelifts, Cedar Hill Marina, $125,000. The Nanacoke Marina, $75,000. The West Side Community Center, $17,815. Roof repair for the Civic Center, $4.1 million. And then the At the Road paving at $1 million.
It would be a roof replacement, not repair.
I'm sorry, replacement,
Yeah,
yes.
roof replacement.
So this time we open the floor for a public hearing on resolution 24-2024. If you have any comments you'd like to make, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns.
Name's Joe Lappin, Captain Joe Lappin, and Wicomico County resident, Hebron, Maryland. First of all, I want to say a scripture really quick. I always introduce myself in that way. In Proverbs 25:2, it says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out the matter." And I want to start by saying thank every one of you. Thank each and every one of you for this improvement, this budget. I'd like to thank Ms. Giordano, the finance office. I would like to thank everybody that you have really, this county has come to the good. You're 94 million, I think, 98 million to the good. Is that, did I stand corrected?
It's about a little under 90.
About 90, so about 90 million. One of the things that I have done is I was elected as the chairperson of the Wicomico County, the West Side Community Task Force. And this has happened in October this past year, and it's a newly formed group of taxpayers that basically just got together. We organized and we decided that we were going to address things in the county that needed to be fixed and addressed. And one of the things that I can say, Mr. Wynn has certainly heard us, Ms. Julie has heard us, Jeff's not here, but he's heard us as well, and we've had several meetings with him. And one of the things that I can say is that all of this took place because of the things that the county was lacking. And that brings me to a quick budget. The things that you guys are fixing, you're fixing what the county was lacking. And one of the things that I continually hear is that it's been a decade, it's been 10 years, it's been 5 years for upgrades, it's been, and we're getting to it and that kind of stuff. In that, as a whole, you guys have, it seems to me like you guys have come together. I think that if you guys would apply the remaining part of the interest money, it sounds like we had $7 million as far as I know, and as far as in my understanding, talking with these guys and talking, I think with Ms. Julie, we had about $7 million total to use kind of today. One of the things that I want to point out is that although it's we're on a West Side Community Task Force, and we're dealing with the West Side, so Ethel Road, we're dealing with the boat ramps and all that over there. We are also still county taxpayers. And one of the things that kind of caught my attention is that the Civic Center was a $4 million project. And some of the questions that I have is what damage is being placed and the extra remaining money that we had left over. On the interior of that, what damage needs to be replaced inside that building? Mr. Josh, I also agree with the scanners, different things that were here. I know that Billie Jean Jackson, the park over there, that was a park that we played football on as a kid when I grew up. So all of those things need to be addressed, and when we can do it now inside of our budget, I think that's something that needs to happen. So if you guys can make that for a record and take that into consideration, I ask that you take the remaining money and use it to that benefit. Thank you very much. Good job, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Ladd. Any other public comments? That concludes the public comments. Excuse me. That concludes the public comments for Resolution 24-2024. Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 24-2024.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? I think what we were looking at with this total amount, part of this was the roof. Is that correct? With the Civic Center? And do we have a contractor who's on the Zoom call in reference to this?
What's the person's name?
Yeah, he's on Zoom.
Well, I'm
Okay.
letting them in right as we speak.
Because I think what we were trying to get in reference to the Civic Center, in the last work session we had, we talked about $165,000 to make the repairs. And initially, they were going to suggest to, once we made the repairs, then fix the roof, I guess, within about a year. But we thought, well, maybe we'll just go straight to the actual roof itself.
Correct.
But since that time, there are some council members that have had concerns over whether or not we want to get into that expense of $4.1 million with a new roof, or whether or not we would choose to do the 165. The one question that wasn't asked was whether or not the 165,000 might last 10 years.
The problem is the gentleman who's on on Zoom is actually the consultant that we hired to evaluate our roof.
Right.
I have been with the county over 10 years, and we have had that consultant come and look at the roof multiple times in those 10 years. And, oh, by the way, Pamela and Finance Director. Sorry. We have, yes, the actual patch could last multiple years. The question becomes is where's the next hole going to form? This roof is original to the building when it was rebuilt after the fire. That is an incredibly long time to have a piece of infrastructure that is protecting a valuable asset to the county in place. Since I have been with the county, as you know, I started with Rec Parks and Tourism. I have heard that we need to replace the roof. We have never had the funding available to make that happen. We put it in the budget for fiscal '25. We have additional funds available to us now in fiscal '24. Yes, we could patch this. That is not my recommendation. That is not the recommendation of our consultant. Would he understand and say, okay, it's better to patch than not fix? Yes. But at this point in time, you're patching something that's been patched multiple times. If your personal roof was 50 years old, would you patch the hole and wait for the next one to appear? Or would you say 50 years is an incredible time that we have gotten out of this roof? And it's time to replace it so that our infrastructure remains viable and it remains, we have done significant interior renovations to that building in the 10 years that I've been here. We've replaced the seats in the arena. We've painted the whole arena. We've replaced all the flooring in every room in that building except for the back area, which the customers rarely, if ever, see. We have, and so we have updated the walls so that they no longer look like cinder block. We have invested significant funds in that building, and it makes sense for us to fix the roof and put on a new one so those funds don't go to waste and that we have to repatch.
Yep. Jeff, go ahead.
Going back a little farther, it was about 2007, there was a move to replace the roof. And apparently one of the hot roof companies, the owner, happened to be watching the council meeting or read it in the paper and stated that the roof did not need to be replaced at that time. And County Executive Pilot got him on the roof, and they repaired the roof for a little less than $100,000. And he said that we could probably get another 10 or 12 years out of that roof for that amount of money. Those 10 or 12 years have passed.
Yes.
So I think it's time to replace the roof.
Again, we are investing. You guys agreed for the executive to sign an agreement with the federal government to do additional upgrades to that facility. Let's make sure that the interior of the facility stays looking appropriate.
I have a question, not to ambush you on this, but from a constituent emailed me, and Steve, I don't know if you can answer this better, but they were saying, since you're replacing the roof, have you thought about possibly including solar panels as well? Which I thought was a really good question, and I understand it really changes the dynamics of a lot, but weighing the option of solar panels on the roof and what it might save us in utility costs in the long run, I thought it was a very interesting, question that they had asked.
So at this moment, we have not considered that aspect, but I will want to remind the council that we are in the process of doing an agreement for a solar farm at the airport, and that solar farm is going to provide electricity for the county as a whole, including the Civic Center, at a discounted rate. So at this moment, we have actually are still having continual calls about finalizing those documents. But we have been to council once with that information, and we're getting close to finalizing the documents to bring back for final approval.
Mm-hmm. You mean on the solar?
On the solar farm.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel personally that if we go that route, that a solar farm on the roof of the Civic Center is the right place to put it, when we're already looking at a solar farm at the airport that is going to provide the electricity needs at the discounted rate. I mean, yes, that actual electricity is not coming to the Civic Center, but the discount associated with that electricity, because the size of that farm going in is going to provide for the needs of the county.
Chuck Russo, Deputy Director with Recreation Parks. It's a great question, and we actually did look at that years ago, but the weight load from the solar panels would impact the weight loads for concerts and shows on the interior of the building. When you're hanging the rigging and some of the other things, all that calculates the weight load on top of the roof and the weight load that's hanging from the steel inside the building. So that probably wouldn't be feasible depending on the weight load of the things. At least back when solar came out, the weight load was too heavy to be able to do that. If everybody remembers, it's been years ago, but Disney on Ice had to cancel a show because of the weight load of ice and snow that was on top of there from a storm, and we had to hand shovel to be able to get the show to go on. We couldn't pull the rig up. It was all ready to go, and the storm hit. So that would be a big factor to not be able to put something on top of that roof.
So, I'm sorry, you were going to say, Joe.
I was just going to say, a flat roof with solar panels just creates a lot more areas that would cause leaks, and in the future, if you needed to patch it, it would be even more problems. So.
Yeah, the penetrations of affixing those to a roof, on a flat roof, again, I am not a roof person, but
No.
the amount of penetrations, and again, based on the weight load issue, which And again, based on the fact that we're also looking at this solar farm that's already going to provide the electricity needs of the county at the discount, I don't feel that that is a path that we should head down.
Josh?
Well, just, not that we need to talk about solar all night, but of course, stating the obvious, we need to get as much solar energy on our properties as we can, as much as we can, because that lowers the amount of money that we have to then, I mean, even if this one project is meeting our needs, I'd rather us make money and lower the amount of money that our taxpayers have to pay. And then we've got this giant parking lot for the Civic Center that sits empty 98% of the year. That's a place that, of course, should have solar panels or maybe a canopy. But nonetheless, I guess we're just talking about the roof repair as the main piece for this component. And, I don't know. I guess what I was going into this meeting trying to get clarity on is, can we do what we were thinking at last meeting, which was basically, we either, we try to repair it if we can very quickly, or we try to throw all the money and fix it right now. How quickly can we get to that point of fixing it, or are we trying to do too much at that?
I ultimately, the process for fixing this is going to be, we're going to work with our consultant to create the bid specs. We are going to send out a bid because this will have to be competitively bid. But any point in time we do that, now or 6 months from now, you still have that timeline. So the advantage to starting it now, having all the funding now, instead of having to wait till November when we bond, means that the roof is fixed 6 months earlier then, and we don't have another leak that we then have to temporarily do something with and hope that it doesn't spring up in a more critical area right over where we want a concert to set up and load in and have to then cancel a show because we have water raining down on lights.
Yeah, I guess that was more of the core of my point or my question there is, it seemed at last meeting there was almost not quite to say a hair on fire, but a hair covered in water kind of a moment. We were apparently there's big holes in the roof and there was dripping through.
It's more of how many more times do we want to chase a patch around a roof? And again, based on the life of infrastructure, we have been really, really lucky that this has lasted us this long with patches. I feel personally that it's throwing good money out after, you're going to throw money away if we don't make the decision now to just bite the bullet. Let's fix this, get it done, so hopefully it lasts us another 50 years. And we don't have to, none of us have to be talking about this. Instead of us coming back in another 6 months or a year saying, we have another hole in the roof and we don't have funding for it and we need to fix it.
Any other questions? Jeff, any questions?
I just want to say I'm in favor of replacing the roof. The Civic Center is a revenue generation piece, and we need to protect our investment. So I would be in favor of replacing the roof.
All right. Anybody else?
I concur.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
Seriously. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 24-2024, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution passes unanimously. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
This time we have the audit presentation by PKS and Company. Good evening. How's everyone? You could, from my left to right, just state your name and your position so that the public knows. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Klegger, partner with PKS and Company.
I'm Ashley Stern, partner with PKS and Company, and Ryan Taylor, who's getting the presentation together, is a manager with PKS and Company.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me.
Let me go ahead and start. Okay. So, good evening, Mr. President and council members. Our purpose this evening is to present the audit results for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. We'll mention some of the key highlights for the last fiscal year, and of course, try to answer any questions you may have for us this evening. You should have also received the bound financial statement reports, which is about 140 pages. I believe it should be in your brief book, as well as some financial highlights and graphs, which we'll present tonight. So I'd like to begin with the audit report itself, which is in the bound financial statements, and it's the first 4 pages in the report. Our opinion, which is probably the most important paragraph in the report, is on page 1 is in the very first paragraph. And I'm happy to state that our opinion on the financial statements for Wicomico County for the year ended June 30, 2023 is an unmodified opinion. This essentially means that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and is often referred to as a clean opinion and is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as auditors. The remainder of the audit report, essentially on pages 2 to 4, covers management's responsibilities for the fair presentation of the financial statements, as well as the auditor's responsibilities for testing those amounts in the statements, gathering evidence, and performing audit procedures to determine that the statements are actually free from material misstatement and that they are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition, an audit in accordance with auditing standards requires us to report on the county's internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations, and that report is on page 139 and 140. Unlike the audit report, which I just mentioned, it is not an opinion on controls or compliance, but rather to report on any findings as a result of our audit testing. We did identify one material weakness related to account reconciliations and also a significant deficiency related to grant reconciliations. Overall, though, we believe that the number of deficiencies has declined in recent years, and in fact, we only ended up with 2 this year, which we felt we were very pleased with. So that's essentially a summary of the 2 reports, and with that, I'll turn it over to Ashley to walk you through some of the numbers.
Thank you, Mike. So rather than having you flip through the 140 pages that Mike referenced, I'm going to have you entirely focus on our colored copy in front of you and have you flip to start on page 3. Also in front of you, you should have 2 other bound copies of the financial statements. First, you'll see the larger bound copy, which is your financial statements, and the second bound copy is our auditor's communications. Again, I'll summarize all of those as I go through these numbers, and I'll even give you some reference points for reading later tonight. Just some key highlights on our government-wide financial statements. Just as a reminder, there are really 2 sets of financial statements within the bound copy in front of you. First, we have our government-wide financial statements, which includes all the activities of the government and the component units, the Board of Education and the library, as well as we have our fund statements, which include our governmental funds as well as our enterprise funds. So first, we're focusing on our government-wide financial statements. Again, this includes our 2 component units, the Board of Education and the library. Just as a note, our unrestricted net position totaled $54.15 million, or 37% of our total net position, or the health of the county. That is a $22.4 million increase in net position from 2022. Now, most commonly, the government-wide net position is not what is focused on or recommended to be focused on by the GFOA, so we'll actually go over a few more net position numbers, but this can be a long-term indication of the health of the county. This includes any long-term liabilities, such as our other post-employment benefits liability or asset, and our pension liability, so it has more of a long-term focus than a short-term focus. And all these numbers can be found on page 16 of those bound financial statements. Taking a look at some key financial highlights for our general fund, the unassigned fund balance remains strong. We're at just over $74 million, which is 73% of our total fund balance. Our committed fund balance and our assigned fund balance, which are also somewhat of our undesignated fund balances, are $19.5 million and $2 million respectively. We've talked about this over the past couple years. The GFOA recommends no less than 60 to 90 days in your undesignated fund balance. Just for reference, the 60 days would be 24 million and 90 days would be about 37 million. So currently the county has about 180 days of operating expenditures within our fund balance. So if for some reason the county were not to be able to bring in any revenue for the next 180 days, we'd be able to afford all of our expenses for the next 6 months. Total general fund revenues increased by about 14 million from 2022, whereas expenses also increased by 11 million from 2022. There was a total increase in our fund balance, or again, the health of the county, by about 20 million. And this is a combination of both revenues and savings on our expenditures. Looking at our budget to actual revenues were $13.6 million greater than our budgeted amounts, and actual expenditures were $14.7 million less than our budgeted amounts. Sometimes a graph can really speak 1,000 words. So we took a look at the general fund revenues over the past 6 years to see where the trend has been. The first column that you're seeing in front of you is our property taxes. As you can see, with the increase in values of property taxes, you're seeing that increase over the past 6 years, totaling just over $73 million in 2023. Our income taxes have really seen an increase over the past 3 years. In 2023, we're just north of $70 million collected in income taxes. And lastly, our other revenues, which would include our grants, our fees for services, as well as any investment revenue, was just north of $39 million for 2023. Taking a look at our expenditures over the last 5 years, we broke them down by salaries, our operating, our debt service as a whole. This would also include the Board of Education debt and Board of Education maintenance of efforts. As you can see, over the past years, we saw a large increase in our other operating expenses for 2023, and that's actually capital expenditures in 2023, so it's investment back into the county, not just an increase in regular expenditures. We've seen a decline in our debt service over the past 5 years, and that's due to some refunding of bonds at lower interest rates over the past few years, so we've seen some savings there. Taking a look at our general fund equity, or our health over the past 6 years, you can see where we've had an increasing fund balance from 2018 all the way to 2023. In 2023, that green column is our unassigned fund balance, with the other classifications, which are non-spendable, restricted, committed, and assigned, are in red. So the unassigned making up the majority of our fund balance. One of the things we like to look at when we look at this trend over time, if you're starting to see fund balance vastly decrease over the years, we have to take a look to see if the county can continue its operations. The county has been seeing the reverse over the past few years because of various grant funding. We've talked about the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as other increases in our revenues. We've actually seen a steady incline over the past years. Taking a look at our enterprise funds, just a few to focus on. This is not all of our enterprise funds, but wanted to focus on our solid waste fund, airport, and our nursing home. Solid waste saw a decrease in our revenues from 2022 by just about $400,000, whereas expenses increased by $800,000 from 2022. Overall, we saw an increase in our net position of just over $100,000, and that's compared to a $3 million increase in 2022. And the reason that we had that big change is because of some capital projects transfers that were transferred into this fund in 2022 that did not happen again in 2023. We also had a lot of repairs that occurred in 2023, investments back into the solid waste fund.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's always been sort of like a stickler when you have enterprise funds, and if anybody doesn't know what that means, an enterprise account, an enterprise fund means they're supposed to be self-sustaining.
Right.
So it's sort of becoming a very gray area, especially over the last, I guess, probably about the last 6 years. It's been increasing forever. So much so, even with the airport, that we decided, I believe it was last year or the year before, we transferred the airport in as an actual department of the county. And I don't understand Mr. Wilbur, if he's not here. Oh, yeah, there you are. Somehow or other, we're still working out the fine tuning of that, so it will be formally a department head and not an enterprise account, correct?
That's what I think.
Yeah, but we sort of went that direction because we were pumping millions of dollars into an enterprise account that was supposed to be self-sustained. I don't know how significant this is from a financial point or whether it's just to follow in line with whatever your standards are, but we're seeing the same thing with solid waste here. And we know that the nursing home has always been, we're always trying to play catch up, I think, with the nursing home as well. So I'm just interested in your perspective on how we're operating efficiently if we are subsidizing enterprise accounts constantly.
So the government accounting standards specifically state that when we're looking at if a fund is an enterprise fund or a governmental fund, that we need to look at how they're budgeting. If they're budgeting to be self-sustaining for their operating expenditures, not their capital expenditures, but their operating expenditures, then they should be considered an enterprise fund. However, if they are consistently budgeting for a transfer from the general fund, which is in the airport's case, to supplement operations, then they should be considered a governmental fund. For the airport, the majority of airport funds in the United States are considered governmental funds. So we've been tracking this over the past years. COVID money's really kind of put a stop in our willingness to change over to a governmental fund. But in talking with the county this past year, I believe 2024 is the year we're making that change over to a governmental fund. And what the difference that has on our audit as well as the auditing standards is governmental funds actually budget a little bit different than our enterprise funds, as well as account for these long-term capital asset investments differently. So you'll see that kind of next year. You saw it with the Civic Center 3 years ago. Forgive me if I've got the wrong time frame.
COVID messed everything up. Yeah.
But that is kind of the way moving forward. And we've been monitoring it with our solid waste fund as well as the nursing home. They do consistently budget to cover their operating expenditures. Now, whether or not they meet the budget or not, that could be a difference.
Well, nursing home did improve this year, this last fiscal year. But you're right, it has been kind of a drag in prior years, and the airport always has been. So we're definitely going to consider moving that one.
Right, and not in a bad way either. I mean, it's just
right.
There's a
It's
lot
the nature
of investments. There are a lot of investments involved in any airport operation.
Yeah, but even solid waste currently still has a positive net position if you look on page 23. So it's not negative, but airport certainly is one we would consider moving. So.
Thank you. Yes, did you?
I said they answered my question I had.
They
I was
did.
concerned about the negative when I was reading. Yeah.
Speaking of the airport, revenues actually increased from 2022 by $286,000, and expenses decreased by $335,000. Again, that does have to do with some of the COVID funding related to the airport in previous years. There was a decrease in net position after depreciation of $1.34 million due to some grants in 2022 that produced some capital funding that are not in 2023. The nursing home saw an increase in their revenues by $1.1 million in 2023, and expenses increased by $486,000. And overall, it saw an increase in its health of about $224,000.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's been the first increase in net position in a while for the nursing home.
Was any of that due to COVID or any funding? I mean, any COVID funding or?
Most of the COVID funding for the nursing home actually occurred in previous years, but I believe they've changed a lot of items over there and have had some positive changes from my understanding.
Staff changing. They call some people back to work.
It's hard to hear you, Shani.
I said staff.
I know that's unusual.
Staff changing. And because they called one lady back to work who was really good in finance office.
Real good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Again, I love graphs. So we did a trend report for the last 5 years for solid waste so that you could kind of see where the trends have been. As you can see, revenues have mostly increased over the past years. We did see a slight decrease in 2023 compared to 2022, but overall a good increase over the past 5 years. Revenues or expenses have steadily increased. There's been a lot of repairs and maintenance costs, a lot of funding of the landfill that has increased over the past 6 years. And also you can see that last column, which is our operating income or loss. So have we been making money or have we been losing money at solid waste? And over the past 6 years, we've been making money, some years less than others, but been consistently adding to our fund balance. Little different story with the airport over the past 5 years. Taking a look at revenues, we have seen a nice increase over those timeframes, as well as we've seen a decrease in our expenditures. Now, what's unique about the airport is that there's a lot of federal grants that are received to facilitate the capital projects out there. All the capital funding comes from federal grants, but you don't get to recognize the grants over time. You actually have to recognize the expenses over time. So you might receive, a really large grant in 2022, but have the expenses for the next 15 years to come. So that's one of the unique things about the airport that does cause a little bit of a disconnection in their numbers over time.
I think a real major issue really is that we only recognized in the last 4 or 5 years that there's a lot of deferred maintenance at the airport.
Yeah.
And we have been, fortunately through COVID, through CARES funding, et cetera, or ARPA, we've been very fortunate to be able to, make those investments, to reinvest in the airport and bring it back to where we really want it to be. So.
Just as a note, more information on the enterprise funds can be found on page 21 of your financial statements. Now that we've taken some look at some key financial highlights this past year, we did implement one new accounting standard when you're looking at the numbers, is GASB statement number 96. If you remember last year, we talked a lot about the new lease standard that came into play in 2022. This is the same thing as the lease standard, but it applies to your subscription-based information technology arrangements. And this is effective for June 30th, 2023. It has governments recognize certain right-of-use subscriptions and certain right-of-use subscription liabilities related to any long-term agreements. Again, these GASBs are supposed to provide clarity. I'm not sure really how much they do, because I think it causes a little bit more confusion than it does clarity. But there was not a material effect on the county's financial statements in relation to this GASB implemented. But in the future, you could see something that would affect your financial statements. Taking a look forward, there is one new GASB that would affect the county as a whole. This is GASB statement number 101, which has an actual overhaul of our compensated absences or your accrued time off. So sick time, comp time, vacation time, etc. This is effective for June 30th, 2025, and it really could rechange the recognition and measurement of your compensated absences. At this time, we don't have the exact impact that it'll have, but it will be a change for the future. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
It's a lot to process.
Under the audit communications, the draft auditor's communications, I'm glad to see that there are improvements there. The second page seemed to have a lot of flags that I wasn't sure about, that I was interpreting it all correctly. I didn't know if you could help us with that, sort of review that.
Absolutely.
Schedule expenditures of federal awards, et cetera, so grant accounting, accounts payable, et cetera.
Correct. So we do issue a management report that is what we call our best practices recommendations. We're auditors, we love to give recommendations. So these are things that we've noted in our testing that the county could do a little differently or do more efficient. So a few of these all actually stem from those types of recommendations. The first, we referenced the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Through some turnover in the county's excuse me.
You want water?
Oh, no, thank you.
Yes. Yep.
I'll grab it.
Sorry, recovering from bronchitis.
I think everybody has something that's somewhere in the last month.
So the schedule of expenditure of federal awards is a very distinct schedule that details all of your federal grants as well as any expenditures related to those grants. It takes a lot of training and a lot of additional education to be able to kind of comprehend this type of schedule and be able to prepare it. So we're recommending that through the turnover in the finance department, the county's finance department continue to receive some training in relation to this specific schedule, which actually is an additional audit that we complete for the county. It's called a single audit under uniform guidance, where we specifically test all expenditures related to any federal money received and spent. So just additional training related to that. Same thing with our grant accounting, our grant schedules. It was reported in our communication previously, but also just some additional training among all the county departments in relation to grants. The county has received so many additional grants over the past 5 years. It's important to continue to keep up that training of your finance staff across all of county departments.
Part of what we've been discussing and part of what I know during the campaign was a really hot topic with everybody was the fact that we felt that the county certainly needed, and you'd have to help us too, whether or not we needed a grant writer or we needed a grant administrator. Some people say both, But we do know that when you get into that type of circumstances, that they more than pay for themselves, and we know that.
Yep.
So it's not as if it's going to grow government, because actually it will grow government, but it's more than going to pay for itself in the long run. So in light of this, I don't know if there is an answer there, but is that an administrator or would that be a grant writer? It sounds to me like it's more of the grant administrator, right?
So I would say these two categories fall under what I would term a grant administrator, and what we're seeing at other governments is a grant administrator, somebody to be able to oversee, make sure grant reports are filed timely. Each grant has different reporting requirements. You could have some due at the 15th of the month, the 30th of the month, every other month, different qualitative requirements. Those types of things, after you receive the grants, are important to be able to keep up with in order to retain the money, or else you may have to return any type of grant money.
Yes, especially on the federal side, because the federal grant reporting and requirements were really tightened up over the last 2 years, more significantly than in the past. And also, mentions grant accounting and accounts payable reconciliations here. We did actually report those as significant deficiency and material weakness. They're kind of just, in this section, we're just really talking about how to do additional training and things that can be covered. But those comments were actually in the audit report.
Right.
So.
Most counties have a grant administrator.
Most counties have somebody, whether they use that term, have somebody who specializes in grants, because it's a very distinct skill to be able to do all this reporting with grants. Same with grant writing. It's a very distinct skill. So most have somebody who has that specialized training in that capacity.
Yeah, 74,891,000 is our 73% of our total fund balance. I'm curious. I've been told that that's a really good number. That's really good for the state. Is that true? I mean, I'm just trying to understand. So, I was told that that's one of the highest in the state.
It's exceptionally strong. I don't know in comparison to other counties, as not all of their financial information has been made public yet, but
Right.
At the same time, very strong to be able to cover 180 days. That's probably one of the highest that I see in all of our governments.
Yeah, it's a very healthy position.
That's
as
good.
well.
That's
yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Plus, we've had good people that have been up here and good county executives in the past, and
Right.
and we've done a good job. It seems like I'm not taking any credit of that because it's my first year here, but I know there are certain people up here that have been watching the doors to make sure we have a healthy balance. And
Yeah, I mean, the trend has been very good, as the graph even shows.
yeah, that's you guys right here.
And we
Anyway.
looked at, and when you look at the Moody's report, when it comes back, they actually state that because of Wicomico County's high fund balance, that gives us a lower rating, which is, a higher rating, which is really good.
Right.
It's actually in the paper that they handed us, so there is a report on that.
I just have one more thing. Is there a point where we have too much money in the account, or do we have to? Is it okay to continue to grow it?
So the GFOA only, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, only gives that bare minimum of when there's a problem in too less of a fund balance. But there's a fine line between having too much and not being able to put the money back into the county and county services, and keeping a strong fund balance one, for your bond rating, but two, also to make sure that you reserve money for future. The county does have a rainy day policy that it does take into account in those numbers. So there is savings aside for that. But also, I think there's a fine line between having too much and too little.
I'm just curious on where the floor is, because I don't want to hit the floor, get too low.
The GFOA says the floor is 60 days.
Which I think is low, but.
Yeah,
that's
most
my
commonly
personal
we
opinion.
want to see about 4 months.
I mean, when you mentioned the fund balance, there is a commitments and emergencies part of that's committed. It's like $9 million that's been sitting in there, and I think that's the same figure
That's the
as
rainy
last year. Yeah, that's the rainy day fund. So that's included in the fund balance total. So.
Okay,
I
sorry.
think you said that, you said the 90 days, which is about 37 million,
Okay,
which is our that probably is our base,
so we don't want
our floor.
to, yeah,
That would give me, if you hit 90 days or below, I would have a little bit of a concern.
okay, okay.
Just so it said, of course, the question, of course, that James brought up there is how much is too much, or is there, he's more concerned about the floor, rightfully so. But obviously, there is another target which has nothing to do with any of you all, but obviously, the disparity grant that we get in, I see here on in the general fund, and the highlights, the total general fund revenues increased in 2022 by $14,718,000. Our disparity grant any given year is usually between 9 and 11% of our budget. So we're talking, roughly $13-ish million. Obviously, the good people of Montgomery County keep sending their money to us in Wicomico County because we're poor. So I always want to make sure that we're all aware of that, because that can go away at any point in time.
Correct, you'll find actually on page 125, you can actually see the disparity grant spelled out separately. Josh, just in case you need that number, it was 11.8 million in 2023.
So while we're sitting up here basking in the glory of having a lot of money, if we had not been receiving the disparity grant in the past 5 years, we would probably be looking at an entirely different picture.
Correct.
So.
And the investment income return this year was $7 million. I think last year it was 700,000, as I recall, something like that. So that was very helpful in the current year as well.
That was my question.
We're looking for more questions, I don't want to belabor it too much.
Questions?
Go ahead.
So just before I forget these, so I know the key question of the grant reconciliations, you said is one thing that we're to keep that you're worried about. I guess is this systemic, or what is this a certain area that the grant reconciliations that needed to focus on? Or I know I saw in an email the sheriff's office is doing a great job and others, but anything you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a few years, well, I guess it's been many years now, prior to Bob Culver as the executive, there was a push to actually decentralize your grant reporting, to have them at individual departments. And at that point, your individual departments really had the quality staff, the experience to be able to handle those grants and grant reporting requirements. But since then, through retirements, turnover, et cetera, in grant reporting having such an intricate piece, it's really tough to be able to decentralize that piece. So, and in addition, you've actually received quite a bit more in grants since that point of time. So it's not necessarily a systemic problem, but it's a growth problem. So the county has grown over the past years, and in that growth, there might be room for some additional improvements as well as additional grants if you had somebody with as their sole focus.
Just one other question, I guess, is, and I asked this to you all, I think we're all trying to figure out exactly why, but in 5 years' time, we've gone from 50 million to 70 million in income taxes for the county. What do we contribute that $20 million jump? That's quite significant in 5 years. Why?
Assessments.
Well, this is just income tax.
Income tax,
Right.
I'm sorry, yeah.
So for income tax, it is a function of the amount of tax that the state of Maryland collects from your citizens. And, the other side of our business does a lot of tax reporting, and we can see from those items that the Maryland taxes have increased. Income has increased, amounts paid in for Maryland taxes increased, so thus you're seeing the the opposite side of that.
Sometimes that's a difficult number to budget every year, but you guys have been very conservative on what you, for that particular line item, which is good because it can fluctuate a lot. Just as the last 5 years have all been positive and have been growing, but it's hard to predict that number year to year, so.
Thank you.
You had also had some comments in reference to expenditure and purchase card documentation, things as such. One circumstance where we had a month of billing that had not been posted. I'm just curious as to how do we establish some type of process where we can keep track of this and know specifically when we're solving some of these problems?
So we actually, the county does have a way to track our recommendations and to track the improvements to those. So every year, that's one thing that we do look at, that we do go back and test, is were there any improvements to our recommendations from the previous year? What's been done? And the improvements there too. We're on page 3 of the auditor's communications. The inventory procedures, we just saw that in some people turnover over at the Roads and Solid Waste Department, that the inventory procedures could be strengthened. So we're making that recommendation to strengthen those quarterly inventory procedures. A few things about purchase orders, and this is in every government, any type of purchase order that might be held open, but the task might be finished, just making sure that they get closed, kind of tidied up from that standpoint. Our purchase card documentation, we actually probably make this recommendation in all of our governments, is always continued education on any type of purchase card or credit card program, just simply because with any new staff, there's going to need to be more and more education on what those should be used for, why they should be used, and what they shouldn't be used for. We also noted just some activity that wasn't properly posted to the general ledger that also had to do with a turnover in a certain position, and just kind of the communication of who should be posting that. Our inventory and pricing procedure, we just found a few areas where inventory and pricing needs to be updated throughout the year. This happens, you might receive an invoice after the fact with a discount, making sure that those prices get updated in your system. And then on page 4, to reference, we had 2 months of billings that had not been posted, and that was due to the position being open at that time, and then the person who took over the position did not realize they needed to go back and do those 2 months. And then the last recommendation that we had were just a direct payment request, and just timing of when the request was put in and needs a PO, follow all the procedures in that recommendation.
A question. When these mistakes, or I call them mistakes, when these things are not done, does that cost the county money when you don't keep accurate record keeping?
Accurate record keeping, there is always a risk that if you don't have accurate records, you could cost the county money. In these scenarios, we did not have anything in our testing that cost the county additional money or had cost the county losing money.
Because I know taxpayers, you always have people call you and they want basically to know where the money is. And if you can't answer the question, and then they hear this on page 3 and 4. So I think that as much as we can, we should make sure that the people are keeping. You can recommend, but we want to make sure they do it.
We absolutely will be following up on these recommendations in the future.
It is significant. I mean, I think you all remember, I think it's about 2008, where all of a sudden we discovered we were missing about $250,000 in public works. And, there were arrests made and convictions, et cetera. But, I mean, that was a reality where I guess maybe people were not watching the processes carefully enough. And, people who want to take advantage really find very unique and creative ways to take advantage. So these are very significant. We appreciate you sharing this with us.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else?
Nothing else from our end. We just want to make sure we say thank you, not only to the council, but also to the finance team that helps us out throughout the entire audit. An audit's not a fun process. We ask for thousands of documentation, and they do it with a smile, so we really do appreciate their cooperation and help.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Good presentation.
Thanks.